make your day richer than it was before. Got some good times knocking upon your front door.
Isn't it nice? Welcome, everyone. Welcome. All right. So much clapping. The audience here is so excited. Isn't it nice to open your mailbox and find something that isn't a bill or junk mail? I opened my mailbox yesterday, went and checked the mail, and got this book from Kendra Corman, Time-Saving Strategies, Mastering AI in Communications. She's going to come on the show in a couple of weeks and so nicely sent me a book, signed it. AI is one of those things that I don't understand. I get that it's helpful. I get that I should be using it more than I am, but I feel like, oh, what do you use? And she's going to come on and talk to us about that. Also, Michele is here, who is a book publisher, and I'm interested in how AI is affecting book publishing. So we're going to talk to her about that as well. It's a very, very good show today. So I hope you stick around. Steve Young is also here, who's a comedy writer. He worked on Letterman, The Simpsons. He's worked with Lorne Michaels. It's a good show today. What else do I have to tell you? Let's do a view count, shall we? As of this morning, hit it, John. There you go, 214,041. And it's really those 41 people that I admire the most for tuning in. Now's a good time to just share the show while you're watching, if you're watching this live or not live. Just share the show while you're doing it right now and get us to 215 by tomorrow. It'll be really fun. And that's our new friend, John. I don't know. I made him up. There's no one else here in the room with me, but I'm pretending that other people are here. It is National Weather Person Day. And not that to anybody who isn't a weather person, that means something. But I want to tell you a story about the weather person that I was obsessed with when I was a kid. Now, a couple weeks ago, we had Annie Wood here, who I was obsessed with, dating show host. I used to pretend to be her. Rhonda Grusendorf, who was a meteorologist in Duluth, Minnesota, WDIO-TV Duluth, WIRT hitting, was a meteorologist that I was obsessed with. And she was on in the morning, and I would wake up early for school so I could watch her. And there was something about her that she had this long, beautiful blonde hair, and she just looked so powerful and so confident up there. And so that's one of the first things that made me I always wanted to be a teacher up until Rhonda Grusendorf. And then I was like, I want to be a news reporter. I wanted to be on TV. I think that's where my mind was really going. And so then I used to pretend to do the news, because that's all really my entire life has been, is just imitating other people. But I wrote her a letter, and this was like late 90s. So I was in middle school, high school, and I wrote her a letter at the TV station, and I wanted to meet her. And I think I scared her, because she wrote me a handwritten letter back, and I should have kept it, and I did it. And I had it for a long time. And then I think when my parents moved, they probably threw it away. But she wrote me a really nice handwritten letter about how nice it was that I was watching and a fan, and that she doesn't meet people like, I don't know, she was some big celebrity. She didn't want to meet just the regular Richard from Wisconsin. And so she said I could come tour the station, but like you had to schedule that. And if she was there, she would meet me. And I never met her. So I looked her up this morning because I thought, well, maybe she'll come on the show. But she doesn't really she owns a bridal shop now. Maybe I'll still have her on. But anyway, that's my story. So happy National Weather Person Day. Okay. Outside of this show, I help other people with their podcasts and their live streams. I help with production and editing. And the Wolf Media Festival podcast, which is actually, I co-host it. So very exciting. So any creator out there, it's not a film festival, it's not a festival for one, it's media festival. So if you're writing books, if you are Michele, all of your people that you publish books for, games, podcasts, videos, movies can all enter the Wolf Media Fest podcast or festival. And then I talk to the winners along with my co-host Kyle. I was not on this episode, but there is a new episode that comes out today, and I wanted to show you a clip of it with Alex. So take a look at this. Wolf Media Fest podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
I was just going to segue into the question that I had, which was on set whilst you were directing and all this was happening. Did you find yourself working in collaboration with him where there were moments of like, maybe he had some input about like, this is how it actually was? I'm just curious about how that collaboration between the person who literally experienced it and the director, who's also a very good friend. It's a very intimate, dynamic.
Yeah, I don't know very many films that included family members, and the ones that I have known have had horrific results stemming from them, and for obvious reasons. Somehow, some way, we were able to, on this film, come to terms with the fact that we would, especially Michael, have to go and relive some of the events that might have been kept within him, and without kind of the release of it, that release actually occurred on set, especially during the death scene. He had to relive that again, and this is an important part in the story where
the Wolf Media Fest podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. If you're interested in submitting your work, there you go, right there, wolfmediafest.com. You can come hang out with me again, or just come on this show too. But you should definitely put your work into there. All right, we have a great show today, so I think I should shut up and let's get down to business, shall we? From the writer's room of Letterman to the recording studio in Nashville, our first guest does it all. He's an Emmy-nominated comedy writer, a songwriter, a performer, and the subject of the critically acclaimed documentary Bathtubs Over Broadway, which we're going to talk about as well. So much to talk about. So please welcome Steve Young. Steve, how's it going?
Hey, Richard, I'm good. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. I think this is going to be one of those episodes where it could go on for 4 days.
All right.
But I won't keep you here. I'll only keep you here for like 2 minutes.
I have a hard out after 3 days, so let's
3 days.
Try to
Okay,
keep
good.
it to that.
Good. Even if I have coffee sent to you, it's still 3 days.
Yeah, I really should.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I'll keep you to that. You have been in the comedy world, a comedy writer for Letterman. You've worked with Lorne Michaels. I mean, music. You're working with Kristen Chenoweth. You're doing all of this amazing stuff. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
I don't know if this is helpful or puzzling, but when I was a kid, I had some inklings that I wanted to be a writer, but really my first love when I was like 9 or whatever, I wanted to be an archaeologist. I wanted to dig up lost civilizations in the jungles of Honduras, or figure out some parts of ancient Egypt that hadn't been swept up yet. So there is a certain amount of me that is looking through the past and finding lost and undervalued or misunderstood things. And some of that has persisted into my professional life, even as a theme in writing or collecting or other projects, where I find the thing that seems overlooked or unimportant and dig at it and pick at it and make something.
Were you, what brought you into like the love of comedy and comedy writing?
I guess even by like being in first grade, I can remember like saying things in class that would get a big laugh. And there was a certain amount of positive reinforcement there. Oh, people like that. I like it when they like it. I'm going to try to do that again. And so you try to, whatever little fragment of a gift or a talent you have, you learn to start trying to grow it and cultivate it. I really didn't think that being funny was a possible thing to do or be as a grown-up. That was way ahead. I just thought, oh, I'm a funny kid who says crazy things in class. That was plenty for a long time.
Were you, because a lot of people everybody's super playful when they're a kid, right? And then they sort of grow out of that and and don't really do it anymore. They don't find the joy. They don't play anymore. Did you ever go through that, or were you always trying to find the funny?
I think I was simultaneously a person with some funny inclinations, but I was also a serious kid. And, I was good in school and paid attention and didn't cause trouble. That doesn't necessarily mean you're serious, but you're talking about something. The head writer of the Letterman show, who hired me nearly 35 years ago, at one point, as he and I were getting to know each other, he said approvingly, "You have retained your childlike sense of wonder." I thought, that's not a bad thing to have in your
No.
in your back pocket.
Wow. How long did you work at Letterman?
25 years.
Did you expect it to be that long when you went into it?
The naivete of youth, I didn't have expectations. I've never been good at having expectations for my life or career. Yes, I take some charge of, I should try to get this job, or I should try to make this happen. But I've never been able to formulate long-term ambition. So when I joined the Letterman show, it was 1990. They had already had a golden age during the 80s. And there was a sense that, the golden age has ended, and a bunch of the first wave writers have left, and everything seems a little harder now. And in my heart, I probably thought, it'll last a few more years. I was certainly not expecting a quarter of a century run, but it was a place that suited me. And I did have something to bring to the table and learned how to operate the system as well as anyone can. And so it was the right place for a very long time.
Was that your first big entertainment industry job?
It was the first of what I would call a major league job. I'd had a couple things. There was an HBO show, not necessarily the news, very funny fake news show, ran for a bunch of years in the 80s. That was my first real TV job. There was something called the Comedy Channel that was starting in New York City in the late 80s. It later became Comedy Central, but when it started, it was a very sort of off the cuff, ramshackle. They didn't quite know what it was going to be yet, but I, by this point, knew a few people who said, this thing is starting, you should send in your writing samples. But the Letterman show definitely was the feeling, you've been picked by the Yankees to come up from the minor leagues, and you're going to be in Yankee Stadium tomorrow night. So that was thrilling.
Wow. Where do you remember where you were when you were nominated for your first Emmy?
That's a weird one. I never have thought about that. I know there was, when I was on the staff in 1990, the writers were nominated for an Emmy, but I had not been on the writing staff for the show that I guess got the nomination. So I saw all my friends and colleagues going to do that. So I had to wait another year. I don't remember a huge amount of emotional resonance to that. I never deeply paid attention to Emmys or award shows and all that. And it was fun to go out for, I think, the first one or two times. And we get to fly out, and NBC's paying, and then we get a free rental car for 3 days, and there's a party. So that was all fun. And look at me in a tuxedo, I must be important. And then the actual Emmys themselves, not that much fun. It's a bunch of presumably very talented people all looking slightly like they have imposter syndrome, and somebody's going to win, but it's never you. I have, I believe, 20 nominations and no wins. So I kind of got comfortable with that being the way of the world. And I actually think now it would be at some level disappointing to win an Emmy, because then my perfect streak would be broken.
That's true. That's probably how Susan Lucci felt about it too, right? Yeah. Oh no. For people, there's that illusion of Hollywood and the entertainment industry. And I assume when you first start on something like, Letterman, you're working with Lorne Michaels, the excitement is so high, and every day probably feels like, oh my gosh, what a dream. At what point, or did it ever just become work?
Yeah, there is that initial gloss of, oh, look at me, I must be cool. And then you're just realizing, well, everybody is just swimming through cold soup here, trying to figure out ideas that will work 8 years, 10 years, 20 years into a show. It always had the potential of being the best day ever. You might come in and have your best idea ever, or your wonderful, smart, talented friends would have a great idea that elevates the show. There was always the possibility of magic. But yeah, after a while, it was the day job. And
Yeah.
I slowly started thinking, apparently I'm out of ideas. What else should I do? When I go home at night, yes, I can watch TV. And I had a family, I had little kids, and that was a huge part of my life. But really, what else am I interested in when no one is giving me a deadline or demanding that I need to do something now or in 20 minutes? What would I do? And so that has been the second part of my life, trying to figure out those kinds of questions.
What that's a great then segue to a question of like, what have you been up to? What are you working on? I mean, you've done films, you've done albums, it seems like you haven't stopped working.
No, and much of the work, and I think many creative people in the 2020s will sympathize with this. You'd make a lot of things because you are alive and you are a human being, and human beings do things and make things and try to put themselves out in the world. There's not necessarily a correlation between doing that and making income. And I know I'm very lucky. I had a long run at a great TV show. I'm not in a panic about money right now, but I'm always thinking, what really do I know how to do or can I do that will bring in some income? But meanwhile, while I figure that out, and occasionally something happens, but I'm just like this album I put out this year, and I'm putting out little short comedy music bits on all the social media channels and YouTube. And you may have seen, when reading about me, a magical thing that grew out of the Letterman show. For years, I had to be the writer in charge of a bit called Dave's Record Collection, which was a found comedy piece. I would go out and look for real, unintentionally funny record albums that we could hold up on the show and hear a bit of. And Mr. Letterman would have a humorous remark. So I would go to thrift shops and used record stores looking for the raw material. It had to be real. It had to be unintentionally funny. I began finding souvenir albums from company sales meetings and conventions that contained musicals that were written for these private corporate events. They were like Broadway shows, but they were about selling and servicing diesel engines, or being an insurance salesman, or selling kids sneakers, or being a Coca-Cola bottler. And I just thought, this is madness. This can't possibly be real. But it was real, and some of it was awful. But the best stuff was startlingly great, and sometimes like hauntingly beautiful, but about the least promising topics that musicals could be about. So that led to a decades-long collection / detective story, which culminated in this beautiful documentary film called Bathtubs Over Broadway, which was made by a very talented filmmaker, Deva Huizenant. That showed the world that there was this vast subterranean category of show business that the public was not supposed to know about, but it was full of people who would become Broadway legends. Like, I have a Ford tractor show written by Sheldon Harnick and Jerry Bach a couple of years before they did Fiddler on the Roof. So this was a beautiful movie and has continued to reverberate. I go around and do a show where I bring film clips and introduce people to this world, and I love doing that. So I'm always trying to fit more of those into my schedule.
Your album, Broken Heart Insurance, when did you get into songwriting?
It was a long arc. It was 20 years ago I started getting serious about taking lessons, and I found a wonderful teacher who got me going on finger picking on acoustic guitar, which I had some affinity for. Slowly I began trying to write jingles and little songs for the Letterman show, it was a little nerve-wracking. Okay, I love the guitar music over here. My day job is the funny words. Can they touch? Can the Venn diagram circles overlap, or is it all going to explode? And I started getting like, okay, a few little bits and pieces here and there. And I was enjoying it. The documentary Bathtubs Over Broadway has I guess 3 original songs in it that I wrote or co-wrote. Helped me think, yeah, this is something I can do and I like to do. I do think, to your point about the mental muscles of writing a song are similar to working on a bit at the Letterman show, where hopefully you have a solid premise, a good jumping off point. Okay, that's a good idea. What can I do with that? I'll have this joke. I'll have that joke. I'll develop it. And then it's time to get out before people get tired of it. So I learned from years with Mr. Letterman about economy and efficiency and not overstaying your welcome, hopefully. So songwriting uses some of the muscles I'd worked up. It's sort of like the years of wax on, wax off, and you don't realize you're preparing for some new level of skill. But I had some great lucky connections, met people in Nashville while I was going around with the documentary. One thing leads to another. I'm showing people my early songs that I'm just recording on my iPhone. Oh, this is pretty good. Oh, we got to get you connected with so-and-so. We got to get you some recording sessions. So I've, again, been amazingly lucky. I got to say, I just can't stop talking about how fortunate I've been. Brilliant people who saw something in me that they liked to work with. And these songs are done by A-list people in Nashville. There's a woman named Allison Brown, who's a Grammy winner, producer, plays banjo. She kind of took some of this stuff under her wing, and it sounds so good. It sounds like I have no business sounding this legitimate, but you take it. If somebody believes in you, you got to think, well, they may see something in me that I have to take seriously. So I have tried to live up to other people's vision of me being worth the trouble.
That's so interesting that you've had such a successful career and life, and you're still thinking like, I don't know, am I good enough to do this? That's so interesting.
I mean, I tell people, I used to have imposter syndrome, and then I realized I'm not qualified to have imposter syndrome. So yeah, there's everybody who looks brilliant and busy and successful on social media. Many of them actually are all those things, but they are plagued by, oh, I'm teetering on the edge of an abyss, and people don't know how sleepless my nights are and whatever. So I don't think I'm any great success story. I had a terrific job, and I've met wonderful people and been allowed to pursue other interests. What metric are we using to define success? Lately, it's so hard to do anything in the creative world that makes an impact. I'm writing and acting in short films now. I'm doing this music stuff. And, hopefully your friends think, wow, that's terrific. Are you going to get beyond your circle of friends and make a real splash in the world? Maybe if you do it 100 times on time number 100, you look like an overnight success. So I'm just trying to entertain myself and entertain my like-minded friends and meet people, go places, go to film festivals, meet people and who say, oh, would you like to act in our upcoming film? And sure, I'm not a trained actor, but apparently I've tricked you into thinking that I can be somebody in a movie. All right, sure.
Why not? Why not? That's what life is, right? What do you love most about your life right now?
I love that I had a long, stable period. And again, the luckiness, I was able to have this great job that I was well suited to, was able to raise a family, buy an apartment or two. And when that phase of my life ended, yes, there's a certain amount of confusion to it, but that luxury of saying, if no one is demanding that you be somewhere tomorrow at 9 a.m, and in fact, you have all day with nothing on your schedule, what do you really want to do? And you think, well, I've always had this idea for a novel, and I'm like 60,000 words into a novel. I love playing guitar and working on songs. And I realized about a year ago, there's no reason you can't take your iPhone and shoot funny little music videos and make your own stuff. And there's no shortage of content in the world. We could spend the rest of our lives watching very good stuff and not paying a dime. So it's hard to establish yourself, but the making of it is what I finally realized. That's, for me, where I can lose 8 hours happily. Oh, the sun went down and I forgot to eat dinner because I'm so absorbed in working on recording this. I'm going to record the guitar and the bass. I'm going to harmonize. I'm going to and I'm going to put these together. Oh, look, it's the next day. If you can find something that absorbs you happily, that you've made something, you're just as lucky as you can be.
Yeah. You sound like every artist, and that's what I love. Like you just all of a sudden it's 3 days later, and you're like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
I was having so much fun. I didn't realize I was working.
And what did you make, and is it valuable? That's another question. But I've been reading this book a friend of mine recommended. It's called Art and Fear, and it's all about how to get past these imposter syndrome things about, am I a great artist? You can't worry about that. If you like doing it, and the satisfaction in the process is where it should be, you're going to just do it. So have fun. You're going to get better. You're going to more understand clearly what you like to make, how to work with your materials. Every piece you make may be imperfect, but it will point you towards something better to try next time. And so just this burden of, what is my grade on the art scale? It doesn't matter. It's not for us to worry about. We just have to remember how to keep liking to make things.
What's the best way that people can connect with you and follow you?
Oh, well, if they would like to, there's steveyoungworld.com is my YouTube channel, and I'm always putting up new stuff there, whether the full-length Nashville music videos or 30-second bits of nonsense. I've got who knows if this will last. Apparently TikTok is in trouble. It might go away. I don't feel inherently like a TikTok person, but I also realized you got to move past that. Put your stuff out there. There's no downside to just experimenting. So on TikTok, I'm also Steve Young World. Pants Steve, you can find me on Instagram. That's a relic. One of my very early email addresses was pantssteve@aol.com. And that was because the Letterman show, Dave Letterman's production company, was Worldwide Pants. And we all got pants email addresses from AOL at one point, which very few people have kept. But I found, somewhat to my surprise, a few years ago, I was overseas in the UK. Guess what? Over there, pants means underwear. So suddenly I was telling people, contact me here at Underwear Steve. Wasn't exactly what I was planning, but it's fine. So Pants Steve on Instagram. I'm always putting up little funny bits, and occasionally when I have a live show to do or some event, I'm telling people about it there. I love to just go places and be part of stuff.
Good. I'm glad you're a part of this. I appreciate you being here so much.
Well, I appreciate you saying, and this is exactly what we're talking about. At some point I realized, or you must have realized, I think what I'm happy doing and what I'm best suited for, it may be a whole range of things, but one of them is talking to people and making a podcast and having conversations that may put a spring in someone's step somewhere. So you are following your muse and your bliss. So I salute you.
Well, please come back anytime you want.
My pleasure.
For 20 minutes or 3 days.
All right. Yeah. Is it 2.5 days yet? Did we?
It is. We're almost up. Yes.
We're coming on.
I don't want to overstay my welcome. So I'm going to let you go.
All right.
Steve Young, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. We'll be right back after this break.
You know what would be better than watching this commercial? Watching your commercial. Scan the QR code or visit makeyourdayricher.com/advertising to start promoting today.
Oh, welcome back, everybody. While I get all of this stuff situated, here we go. Most authors think they need a big publishing house to get their book out there, but our next guest is here to bust that myth. She'll share how you can keep control of your work and your earnings. Please welcome Michele DeFilippo. DeFilippo. Well, let's get her out here because of course, I'm going to screw it up. Hello, Michele.
Hi, Richard. How are you this morning?
I'm perfect. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for being here. DeFilippo.
DeFilippo.
Right?
DeFilippo.
DeFilippo. Michele DeFilippo. This is live. So that's we'll put all of your stuff up there, and then we'll also have a course on how to pronounce your name. You've been publishing books for over 50 years. Is this true?
I've been in the publishing industry for over 50 years. My first job was at Crown Publishers in New York in 1972. And don't ask me where all that time went because I don't know.
How did you get into it? Did you grow up like loving literature?
I was a good student. I always loved to read books and so forth, but it was truly an accident. I got out of school and I went on job interviews, and Crown Publishing in New York was the first company that offered me a job. So I accepted it.
And the rest is history.
Yes. I loved it from the beginning.
Oh, I mean, so much, I'm assuming, has changed in the industry. You have a great guide called Publish Like the Pros, a brief guide to quality self-publishing. That's, I think, available on your website, correct?
Yes, it is. Anybody who goes there can get it for free.
Okay, good. And it's, tell everybody what the website, 1106 Design?
1106design.com.
Okay, good. Where does that name come from?
Well, in 2001, when I formed the company, there were no domain names left for graphic design or graphic designers. So I used my birthday.
Oh, well, that's a good way to remember it then.
Yes.
So can you tell everybody what they'll find in the guide? And then I kind of want to talk about what's happening in publishing with, the explosion of self-publishing.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have this opportunity because self-publishing has become greatly misunderstood since it first started about 25 years ago. And that's one of the reasons I've put aside my fear of public speaking to do these podcasts and try to get the word out, because a lot of authors don't know, and nobody is helping them know, that they don't need a publisher to self-publish their book. We're not publishers. 1106 Design, we are service providers, and we can show authors, every day we show authors how to publish their book in their own name so that they keep control of their book and they earn more money every time they sell a book. But now the field is populated by oodles of publishing companies, hybrid publishers, self-publishing companies, and so forth. And they've really complicated things and not in a good way for authors.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've talked to a lot of authors on here who have done both. They've gone, the traditional route. They've gone the self-publishing route. Some of them love self-publishing. Some of them love the help of getting someone in there. Can you talk about like what actually is self-publishing when you get into that? Like what are you responsible for if you're self-publishing?
Okay, well, the original idea of there used to be only traditional publishing. And under that model, the publisher paid all the expenses to produce the book. The author paid nothing. And then when a book was sold, the author would earn a very small royalty on, when the book was sold. And that was fair because the publisher made all of the investment and put out all of that money and expertise in order to produce the book. Self-publishing, when it originally started now, meant that the author could be the publisher, and Amazon is responsible for changing all of that. All of a sudden, for the first time in history, in the publishing history, authors could put their book up on Amazon without the involvement of any other middleman. They could do it themselves. And so that was the original idea. The author would invest the money to produce the book, and the author would get all of the revenue from sales when a book was sold. Okay. Yeah. And authors, that was the original concept, but in the 20 years or so since, we now have publishers again. But the difference is that these publishers charge the author to produce the book, and they take revenue out of the author's pocket on the back end when a book is sold. So that's not really very beneficial to authors.
I know I don't want to bash Amazon because I don't know really anything. I've never published a book on there. And the same thing in the podcasting world. I think it's great that everybody has access now to be able to put out their art in whatever form that is. But sometimes there's the side of that where everybody's putting out stuff and it's not always quality controlled. Can you talk a little bit about that with, a click of a button and you can have a book on Amazon?
Well, you can, but it's not going to be a quality book. And that's the message that has kind of gotten lost and all mixed up in the intervening years. The do-it-yourself message that authors can create their own book and publish it. Yes, they can, but it's not going to be produced the way a major publisher would produce the book. If you're serious about publishing a good book, then you do need the services of editors, designers, proofreaders, ebook formatters, people who, like us, who know the distribution setup and can help you distribute your book in your own name. But the key difference is that we help you produce your book and distribute it in your own name so that you get all the revenue and you never lose control of your title.
Yes, because it's like music streaming, right? Like all these artists are putting out stuff and you need so many streams, so many to even make $1. And I'm assuming it's the same with the book industry, right?
Yes, and it is. There's different ways to publish a book. You might publish it as a hobby, just for your friends and family, and you might be publishing it as a business person, maybe to promote your consulting business or to bring in new customers as a lead generation tool. And there's two different approaches you can take. If you're just publishing a book as a hobby, then maybe you can do it yourself. And maybe you don't need the very best of every kind of service that goes into making a book. But if you're publishing your book as a business, then you really should, the bar is higher, and you really should aim to have a top quality book like a major publisher would produce for you, because buyers do know the difference.
So what type of author or writer or person would be coming to you for help?
Oh gosh, we've helped more than 4,000 authors since 2001. So wow. I can tell you we've seen the whole spectrum of authors. But if there's one thing I can say about all of them is they came to us because they wanted a quality product. They understood that they didn't have the skills themselves to do it, and they wanted somebody who could help them along the way and who has literally spent their lifetime learning how to create good books.
Are people coming to you like before they even start writing, or at what point in the process should someone be seeking out you?
Generally, authors come to us when they have a completed manuscript and finished to the best of their ability, right? And that's when we'll pick up with editing and then cover design, interior design, proofreading, ebook formatting, and all the other services to help them.
Are there any tips that you can give for people who maybe even haven't started writing, but have always wanted to start or wanted to write a book or have a series in their head?
I guess my advice would be don't be afraid, just start. And in whatever little way that you can, maybe you decide you're going to write a paragraph a day, but the starting is the hardest part. Once you start, then you will find the energy and the drive and the inspiration to keep going.
Where do you see publishing going in the future? I was talking about AI earlier in the show, and I'm curious kind of your thoughts on that, because I know people who publish books that have been written by AI, like, there's a whole... Yes, go.
I think we're on the bleeding edge of AI right now, so we have a lot of figuring out to do. I wish people would ask a few more questions. And also there's a big discussion actually just getting some steam now about copyright, right? There are companies out there that I think are a scam. They're telling authors to write your book with AI. And I think we need to start asking questions. Well, how did AI get so smart? And the reason is because it's been scraping everything we've put online and said online for the last 20 years. So it's, in one sense, it's a form of automated plagiarism, right? Maybe great for research, maybe great for planning, for giving you ideas that you might not otherwise have. But I think there's a real danger that it's going to take over creativity. And then what happens when that happens? right? If people
Yeah.
can no longer create or be sure that their creation will truly remain their own, then what happens with that? I don't know. I was in an online discussion just this week with someone who, you can get AI to, let's say, generate a book cover image for you, an illustration. Well, how did it do that? It's studying every other illustration that's been professionally created for decades, and it's taking it and it's giving it to someone else just in return to a prompt. Right. But who owns that? We really have some serious issues to think about. And if you take that image and you change it in some way, does it then become yours? Does that seem fair if you only changed a few pixels of that image? It's a frontier for sure.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting over the probably next 5 or 10 years to see how this goes and what this turns into, I would guess.
Yeah, I don't know, even the law. I mean, I think we're all just kind of casting around right now to say, now what?
Yeah.
Because copyright was a good thing. It is a good thing, right? You can't just take someone else's work and run off with it and call it your own. But how does AI change that? It's going to be very interesting.
Do you have a favorite book?
Oh, it's a book that nobody's ever heard of. It's called The Agony and the Ecstasy by Irving Stone. It's the life of Michelangelo, the fictionalized biography of Michelangelo. And it's probably the only book I've read 3 times because Michelangelo is my hero.
That's so fun. Yeah, I used to work at Borders bookstore for a long, long time. And it was the best time of my life. Like, so fun to see people coming in and meeting authors and hearing stories behind them. You kind of must feel the same way when you're meeting so many people and working with so many people.
Oh, I love authors, and the best thing about our work is that every author is different and every book is different. So there's no boredom at all in the process. And I'm so sensitive to the fact that authors have put so much of their heart and soul into their manuscript. And that's why I'm doing these podcasts too, because I think a lot of times that's not being honored. There's, with no respect to used car dealers, I think in some ways the publishing industry has become the biggest used car dealership in the world. And authors need to be careful, and they need somebody that advocates for them and makes sure that they have all the information that they need to make the right decisions for them. Everybody will make different decisions based on their own priorities and needs, but the deception that's going on in the publishing world right now is troublesome to me.
How can people best connect with you if they have questions or want to work with you?
They can go to 1106design.com on my website. I do have a contact form that gathers some details about the book if they want to do that, or they can just book a consultation by clicking the button. And I will promise you that we won't spam your inbox with 5 messages a day after you contact us. We don't do business that way. We just respectful business, no pressure, all education with us.
Love that. And like I said, the guide is on there. It's a free PDF download, which is great.
Yes.
What do you love most about your life right now?
Oh, it's more than I could ever imagine. I mean, just to kind of explain how everything has changed since I was growing up. When I was a kid, I distinctly remember my mother telling, and you got into that discussion of what do you want to be when you grow up? My mother distinctly told me you can be 4 things. You can be a teacher, a nun, a nurse, or a mother. Those are your 4 choices.
Wow.
And of course, even I might have been 5 years old when she said that. Even then, I knew that was the wrong answer. But that was the culture at the time as I grew up in it.
Well, I'm so glad you're here to kind of talk about what's going on right now and how you can help people. We have a lot of authors on here, and I know that you're such a great resource. So I'm glad to have met you.
Well, thank you. That's what I want to do. And people can contact me with questions. They don't have to be a customer. I'm really, truly happy to educate anyone and at least share what I know so that they can plug it into their own personal puzzle and decide what to do next.
Okay, good. And any of those good books that are coming across your desk, we'll have those authors on here if you'd like. Love to
Oh,
have them.
that's awesome. We can talk about that.
Okay, good. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Of course. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go away.
Listen, everyone needs a co-conspirator to reimagine their lives and uncover the opportunities in the challenges they face. If you are looking for the place where hope meets possibility and you are ready to create a life of meaning despite the diagnosis, look no further. Helen is a certified professional coach with a background in medical research and an autoimmune diagnosis who brings compassion, empathy, and your best interests to every conversation. Learn more about coaching with Helen at helensampsonmullen.com.
That's our show. Thanks for watching, everybody. Now's a good time to still share the show and continue the joy here. Thank you to both of my guests today. On tomorrow's show, Marcy Axelrod is back talking about how to show up in your life and in your day. And Joelle Doley is here to talk about a nonprofit that she has started to help those affected by the California wildfires. So go make your day richer. Go make somebody else's day richer. You've made mine by watching the show, and I love you for it. I'm actually on the way to the dentist, which is why we started the show early. So we'll see you tomorrow, everyone. Bye-bye.